Marcus Thorne had always felt like an imposter in the Grand Council chamber. As the junior diplomatic envoy from Proxima Centauri, a relatively insignificant system with barely 2 centuries of interstellar travel history, he was accustomed to being overlooked, which was precisely why he noticed what everyone else pretended not to see: the empty seat. Not just any empty seat. The most prominent position in the semicircular array of 7,412 delegation stations that comprised the Galactic Assembly, set directly opposite the Council Arbiter's podium, constructed of materials Marcus couldn't identify, gleaming with a dull blue luminescence that seemed to absorb rather than emit light. The Earth seat. Always empty. For 300 years, Ambassador Thorne, your attention wanders again, whispered Sentinel Vorax, his superior and mentor, a being whose weathered exoskeleton bore the microscopic etchings of 4 decades in diplomatic service. The Arcturus delegation is about to propose interstellar shipping route adjustments that could benefit our mining operations in the Oort colonies. Sorry, sir, Marcus replied, lowering his voice to match his superiors. I was just wondering about... Don't. The single word carried such weight that Marcus physically recoiled. Vorax had never used that tone with him before. Focus on matters within our purview. The assembly session droned on for another 4 hours. Representatives from 100 species debated resource allocations, territorial expansions, and technological exchange protocols. Marcus maintained perfect posture and recorded meticulous notes, but his eyes kept drifting to that empty seat, its blue-black surface somehow more substantial than the occupied spaces around it. When the session finally adjourned, Marcus lingered, watching as delegates filed out through various atmospheric chambers, adapted to their native environments. The Syrian ambassador, with her crystalline exoskeleton that refracted light into mesmerizing patterns, paused briefly before the Earth seat. She extended a limb as if to touch it, then withdrew sharply when a Tau City observer merely glanced in her direction. Curious. Accessing historical records on pre-assembly civilizations is restricted to Level 3 diplomatic clearance and above, chirped the information terminal in the Proxima Embassy's research wing. Current user, Marcus Thorne, Junior Diplomatic Envoy, Clearance Level 1. Marcus drummed his fingers against the console, frustrated but not surprised. This was the 7th database query he'd attempted regarding Earth, with similar results. Basic information was available: astronomical data, planetary composition, orbital parameters, but anything related to its civilization or its absence from the assembly was heavily restricted. Problem, Junior Envoy. The voice belonged to Kira Wilson, the human Rigelian hybrid who served as the embassy's security liaison. Her features combined her father's human ancestry with her mother's distinctive Rigelian silver-flecked skin. She'd always been friendly to Marcus, unlike most senior staff. Research for a personal project, he replied carefully. About Earth? Kira's voice dropped an octave, and she casually reached over to disconnect the terminal's monitoring protocols, a breach of at least 3 security regulations. Interesting choice. Do you know something about it? Marcus asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Kira's expression remained neutral, but she blinked 3 times in rapid succession, a Rigelian stress response. Only rumors. My father once mentioned that humans prefer self-imposed exile, that it was safer. She reconnected the monitoring protocols, but official records state they declined membership after initial contact. Nothing unusual. Then why is Level 3 clearance required to access basic historical data? Perhaps because there's nothing to see, Kira replied too quickly. Focus on Proxima's interests, Marcus. Curiosity without purpose isn't valued in diplomatic circles. The second warning in one day, from 2 different sources. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. His quarters in the diplomatic dormitory offered a spectacular view of the assembly station's central hub, a massive structure resembling a perfect geodesic sphere, constructed by the ancient Denebian civilization long before most current member species had achieved spaceflight. From his window, he could see the perpetual flow of transport vessels, the pulsing energy conduits, and the shimmering defensive shields that protected the political heart of galactic civilization. 5 trillion sentient beings from over 7,000 worlds were represented here, except Earth. Marcus activated his personal data slate, disconnected from the embassy network. On it he kept a private journal and research notes that wouldn't trigger automatic monitoring. He began listing observations. Earth seat, prominent position, unique material, no official Earth representatives for 300. High-level clearance required for historical data. Multiple warnings against inquiry from different sources. Visible discomfort when subject mentioned. Syrian ambassador's unusual behavior today. He stared at the list, sensing a pattern, but unable to define it. Something about Earth inspired not just secrecy, but fear. Not the fear of an enemy or a threat, but something deeper, like the instinctive terror of a natural disaster or cosmic calamity. His slate pinged with an anonymous message. Central Archives. Section 7 Tau. Historical Hologram Repository. 030 hours. Come alone or don't come. Marcus stared at the message, his pulse quickening. It could be a trap, a test of his loyalty, or a genuine offer of information. The sender was anonymous, but the phrasing suggested Kira's involvement. He should report this. That was protocol. Instead, he deleted the message and set his alarm. The Central Archives occupied an entire artificial moon orbiting the assembly station. At 0300 hours, most sections were deserted except for maintenance drones and the occasional insomniac researcher. Marcus used his diplomatic credentials to access the general facilities, then followed the directions to Section 7 Tau, a rarely used collection of outdated holographic records from pre-assembly civilizations. The security scan at the entrance was unexpectedly thorough for such an obscure section. When it requested voice identification, Marcus hesitated. Marcus Thorne, Junior Diplomatic Envoy, Proxima Centauri Delegation, he finally stated. The scanner hummed, then displayed, Override Protocol Alpha 79, Temporary Level 3 clearance granted, duration 47 minutes. Someone had adjusted the security protocols recently for him. The repository beyond was vast and dimly lit, filled with thousands of holographic storage crystals arranged in chronological order. A central console glowed softly, already activated. On its display screen was a single file label, First Contact Protocol Earth Contingency. Marcus approached cautiously and touched the activation sensor. The hologram that materialized showed a formal assembly meeting chamber from centuries earlier, with different seating arrangements and many species no longer present in modern sessions. At the center stood a human male in what appeared to be a primitive environmental suit, addressing representatives from dozens of worlds. Must understand, the human was saying, his voice distorted by time and translation protocols. Earth's unified position is final. We will not join your assembly, nor accept membership under any conditions. An elder Danebian rose, gesturing with appendages that seemed too graceful for their massive form. Your rejection is unprecedented. All discovered civilizations have accepted membership within the galactic community. Then we will be the first exception, the human replied. Our condition is simple. Earth maintains absolute sovereignty and isolation. No diplomatic presence, no cultural exchange, no technology transfers, no official contact of any kind. In return, we will remain within our solar system and make no attempts to establish colonies beyond it. And if we refuse these terms? Asked a Syrian representative. The human's face, partially obscured by his breathing apparatus, showed no emotion. Then we demonstrate why acceptance is your only rational option. The recording flickered, and suddenly the chamber erupted in chaos. Warning signals flashed. Representatives rushed to communication terminals. The Danebian elder collapsed, clutching at what passed for a head in their species. What did you do? Demanded a Tau Ceti observer, advancing on the human. A demonstration, the human replied calmly. A small one. The effect is temporary and limited to this chamber. The Danebian will recover shortly. Consider it a preview of possibilities. The hologram froze on the human's face, utterly calm, utterly certain of something that had thrown the entire assembly into panic. Marcus stared, transfixed. What could one primitive species possibly demonstrate that would terrify the combined might of galactic civilization? The recording contained no visible weapons, no obvious threats beyond words. A new message appeared on the console. Secondary file accessed. Warning, contents classified, maximum security. Proceed. Marcus hesitated only for a moment before activating it. A different recording appeared, a sterile laboratory setting, A Regillian scientist addressed the camera directly. Xenobiology, final report, human neurological assessment, classification, cosmic hazard protocol. Earth humans possess an unprecedented evolutionary adaptation we've designated as reality consensus manipulation. When united in belief and purpose, the hologram abruptly dissolved. The lights in the archive flickered, then stabilized. Unauthorized access terminated, announced the archive's security system. Security personnel dispatched to Section 7. Marcus grabbed his data slate and quickly transferred what little data he could before disconnecting. He needed to leave immediately, but his mind was racing with implications. Reality, consensus manipulation? What could that possibly mean? He was halfway to the exit when he encountered the Syrian ambassador he'd observed earlier blocking his path. Behind her stood Sentinel Vurax and 2 assembly security officers. Junior Envoy Thorn, the Syrian's voice resonated through her crystalline form. Your curiosity has led you to dangerous knowledge. I don't understand, Marcus replied, trying to control his racing pulse. It's just historical data about Earth. Why is it restricted? What are you hiding? Vurax stepped forward. Not hiding, protecting. The empty seat isn't empty as a result of absence, but by design. It's a reminder. Of what? The Syrian ambassador's crystalline form shifted, refracting light in patterns that conveyed deep distress. Of why we leave Earth alone, of why we maintain the pretense that they declined membership rather than admit the truth, that we denied their application, and then begged them to accept our denial. I don't understand, Marcus repeated. You've seen enough to guess, Vurax said grimly. Humans can change reality by consensus, not metaphorically, literally. Their combined belief alters fundamental cosmic principles when sufficiently unified. The only reason they haven't reshaped the galaxy is their internal disagreements and the limitations of their population size. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. Observe the evidence. The Syrian gestured to a nearby view screen showing Earth, a seemingly ordinary blue-green planet. One species, confined to one world, with relatively primitive technology, yet they dictated terms to the entire assembly, and we complied. Not out of compassion or political calculation, but terror. The seat remains empty, Vurax continued, as both reminder and warning. We must never forget what exists on that world, nor provoke them into unity of purpose, and we must never, ever invite them to take their place among us. Marcus stared at the image of Earth, his understanding of galactic politics shattering and reforming. Then why maintain the seat at all? The Syrian's crystalline form darkened to deep indigo. Because they insisted. Because they wanted us to remember why they choose to remain apart. And because, Vurax added softly, we fear what might happen if the seat ever disappeared. You should be detained for security violations, Vurax stated coldly as they escorted Marcus back toward the transport hub. But that would require official documentation explaining why a junior envoy's research into Earth warranted imprisonment, and we avoid creating records about Earth whenever possible, added the Syrian ambassador, her crystalline form now pulsing with muted amber light. Information spreads. Information provokes questions. Questions lead to investigation, Marcus completed the thought, and investigation leads to... what exactly? What happens if people learn the truth about humans? No one answered as they entered a private shuttle bay. The 2 security officers positioned themselves at the entrance while Vurax prepared a transport vessel for departure back to the assembly station. The Syrian ambassador studied Marcus with multifaceted eyes that reflected his image 1,000 times over. Curiosity, she finally said, her voice resonating through her crystalline structure. That is your species' shared trait with humans. The Proxima colonies were primarily settled by human scientists and explorers before your people's genetic divergence. Perhaps that's why you cannot let this go. Before Marcus could respond, the lights in the shuttle bay flickered. A maintenance access panel slid open on the far wall, and Kira Wilson emerged, wielding what appeared to be a modified atmospheric calibrator repurposed as a weapon. Step away from him, she ordered, aiming the device at the group. The security officers reached for their incapacitators, but the Syrian ambassador raised a limb. That's a phase disruptor. Crude, but effective. It would destabilize my molecular structure permanently. And painfully, Kira added with grim satisfaction. Marcus, come with me. Now. Marcus hesitated. Kira, What are you? They won't tell you everything, she cut him off. They never do. There's more to this story than they're sharing. Her silver-flecked skin seemed to ripple with intensity. My father didn't just mention Earth in passing. He was part of the last official contact team, 60 years ago. Wilson, Lorax's voice took on an uncharacteristic pleading quality. This path leads to disaster. For you, for him, potentially for entire systems. I've heard that line my whole life, Kira replied. Every time I ask questions about my human heritage, every time I tried to access records about Earth, always the same warnings, never the full truth. She motioned to Marcus again. Choose now, their carefully managed fear or actual answers. Marcus looked between them, his mentor, the powerful ambassador, and the security personnel on one side, the rebellious hybrid security officer on the other. Everything in his diplomatic training told him to choose caution, protocol, established authority. Instead, he crossed to Kira's side. This is a mistake. The Syrian ambassador's crystalline form darkened to a deep indigo, nearly black. There are cosmic principles at stake beyond your comprehension. Then someone should have explained them properly, Marcus replied, surprising himself with his boldness. Kira triggered a control sequence on her wrist device. The maintenance tunnel behind them sealed shut just as the shuttle bay Urbanisi protocols activated, locking down the area. That will hold them for about 15 minutes, she said, already moving through a service corridor. We need to reach Nexus platform before they override the security lockout. Where are we going? Marcus asked, struggling to keep pace. To see my father. Kira's expression was grim. The only living human in the Assembly jurisdiction who doesn't reside on Earth. The only one they allow to exist out here because he's sworn never to return home. James Wilson lived on Nexus platform, a commercial trading hub that orbited at the edges of Assembly space, technically outside official jurisdiction. His dwelling was nestled in the station's maintenance level, a cramped compartment filled with outdated technology and hand-drawn star charts covering every wall. I've been expecting someone for years, the old man said when they burst through his door. His entirely human appearance was jarring to Marcus, who had only seen humans in historical recordings. No silver-flecked skin, no adaptive membranes, none of the genetic modifications most spacefaring species considered essential. Just weathered skin, grey hair, and eyes that seemed to hold both immense wisdom and immeasurable weariness. They found the archives I planted, James stated, not a question. Good. It was getting exhausting waiting for someone curious enough to follow the trail. You wanted someone to discover this information? Marcus asked incredulously. Information wants to be free, the old man replied with a shrug. An old human saying, and we're running out of time for secrets. He turned to Kira. Did you bring the access codes? She nodded, extending her wrist device, pulled them from the embassy's security protocols like you taught me. Full diplomatic override clearance, though it won't last long once they realize I've taken it. Long enough. James activated a hidden panel in his dwelling, revealing an ancient navigation console. We have maybe 6 hours before Assembly security vessels track you here. Just enough time to reach the echo chamber. The what? Marcus asked. A research outpost, Kira explained. Abandoned after the isolation accord with Earth. My father's been monitoring it remotely for decades. Not just monitoring, James corrected, inputting coordinates into the console. Maintaining, preserving evidence they've tried very hard to erase from history. He looked directly at Marcus. Evidence of what really happened when humanity first encountered the galactic community and why Earth's seat remains empty by our choice, not theirs. The journey to the echo chamber took just under 4 hours in James's personal transport, an unmarked vessel with outdated registration that somehow slipped through the Assembly's sophisticated tracking systems. They traveled in silence for most of the journey. James focused on navigation, Kira monitoring security channels for pursuit, and Marcus trying to process the implications of everything he'd learned. They approached what appeared to be an abandoned asteroid mining facility in a remote, resource-depleted system. Only as they drew closer did Marcus realize the asteroid was artificial, a massive construct designed to look unremarkable. The echo chamber was built before first contact, James explained as they docked at a concealed entry point. When Earth's early deep space monitoring detected Assembly communications, they prepared this facility in secret. a place to study the galactic community before revealing our existence. I thought Earth was discovered by Syrian explorers, Marcus said, recalling the limited historical data available. James laughed, a harsh sound without humor. That's the official history. The reality? Earth detected the assembly long before anyone found us. We studied you for almost 40 years before allowing ourselves to be discovered. The interior of the facility was surprisingly well maintained, despite its apparent abandonment. Lights activated automatically as they moved through corridors lined with observation equipment and data storage systems. This is impossible, Marcus whispered as they entered the central chamber. This technology, some of it looks more advanced than current assembly standards. Human ingenuity, James said with a hint of pride, when properly motivated and unified in purpose. The central chamber contained a massive spherical projection system, billions of light points representing the galaxy, with glowing pathways tracking movements and connections between star systems. At the center, Earth's solar system pulsed with a distinctive blue light. This is the consensus map, James explained, a real-time model of human consensus strength throughout the galaxy. Each point of light representing human thoughts, beliefs, and presence. But humans are isolated to Earth, Marcus objected. Officially, yes. James manipulated the controls, and suddenly thousands of tiny blue lights appeared scattered throughout the galaxy model. Unofficially, we've been placing observers throughout assembly space for centuries. Not many, just enough to maintain what we call the consensus network. That's a violation of the isolation accord, Marcus said automatically. An accord built on a lie, Kira countered. Tell him, Father. Tell him what really happened at first contact. James sighed, suddenly looking every one of his advanced years. The assembly didn't fear humans because of some innate ability. They feared us because of what we discovered about the fundamental nature of reality and what we did with that knowledge. He activated another console, and the chamber filled with holographic images of ancient Earth scientists working with equations. Marcus couldn't begin to comprehend. In the 21st century, Earth physicists discovered what we call consensus mechanics. The principle that observed reality is malleable when enough conscious observers agree on an alternative, not just philosophically, but literally. At first, it required massive computing systems and millions of coordinated human minds to create even tiny alterations in physical constants. James pointed to a section of the projection showing what appeared to be massive underground installations. But we refined the process, created the consensus engine, a system that could amplify and direct human consensus to alter fundamental reality within a defined sphere of influence. Marcus struggled to find words. That violates every physical law. It rewrites them, James corrected. That was our demonstration at first contact. We didn't threaten the assembly. We simply adjusted the gravitational constant within the chamber by 0.00001%. Just enough to cause discomfort to the representatives. A tiny demonstration of what was possible, and they panicked, Kira added, demanded humanity quarantine itself. Not just demanded, James said grimly. They were preparing a preemptive strike to eliminate Earth before our abilities could spread. That's when we revealed the full scope of the consensus network. Humans strategically placed throughout assembly space, each carrying a miniaturized consensus engine, each capable of catastrophic reality alterations if Earth were attacked. The projection shifted, showing a massive structure beneath Earth's surface, a complex web of machinery surrounding a pulsing core of indescribable energy. The prime consensus engine, James whispered, humanity's ultimate insurance policy, and the real reason Earth's seat remains empty. Not because we're feared, but because we choose to remain separate, to be the watchers, not the participants. A warning alarm blared from the navigation console. Kira rushed to check it. Assembly vessels, she reported. At least 3 cruiser-class ships approaching. We have maybe 20 minutes. James nodded grimly. I expected this. They monitor this facility more closely than they admit. He turned to Marcus. But that's not why I brought you here. Look at the consensus map. Really. Marcus studied the galactic projection again, and this time he noticed something he'd missed before. A distortion at the outer edge of the galaxy, a void where stars should be, slowly expanding inward. What is that? The actual threat, James said solemnly. The reason humanity built the consensus engine in the first place. We detected it nearly 3 centuries ago, a wave of Nothingness, not darkness, not energy, but the absence of reality itself. A fundamental breakdown of physical laws. The Assembly doesn't know, Kira added, or if they do, they're hiding it even from their own people. It's accelerating, James continued. Our calculations originally gave us nearly 1,000 years to prepare. Now we have less than 50. That's why the consensus network exists, not as a weapon against the Assembly, but as an early warning and defense system against... Marcus stared at the approaching void, incomprehension giving way to horror. Can it be stopped? Possibly, with a unified galaxy-wide consensus, with every sentient species combining their consciousness through the consensus engine technology. James's voice became urgent, but that would require revealing everything, Earth's capabilities, the approaching void, the 3 centuries of deception. It would likely trigger the very conflict we've worked to prevent, Kira said softly. Fear makes people irrational. The Assembly might still choose to attack Earth rather than cooperate. Another alarm sounded. The Assembly vessels had accelerated, now just minutes away. Why tell me this? Marcus demanded. I'm nobody, a junior diplomat from a minor world. Because Proxima Centauri colonists carry more original human DNA than any other offshoot species, James explained. You're compatible with the consensus network, and you now hold a position in the Assembly, however minor. You could be the bridge. From a hidden compartment, James retrieved a small device no larger than a data crystal. This contains everything, the complete history, the consensus engine schematics, coordination protocols for the network. With it, you could either expose Earth's deception to the Assembly, or help Earth maintain its secrets while preparing for the greater threat, Kira finished. The choice must be yours, James said, placing the device in Marcus's hand. Earth's empty seat exists, because we chose isolation over conflict, but that choice may doom us all if the void cannot be stopped. The facility shuddered as docking clamps engaged. Assembly security had arrived. Decide, James urged. Why does Earth's empty seat terrify the galaxy? Is it because of what humanity might do, or because of what humanity knows is coming? And which truth will you reveal? Marcus stared at the tiny device in his palm, the weight of galaxies suddenly resting on his shoulders. Surrender the restricted materials and submit to detention. The Assembly Security Director's voice echoed through the facility's communication system. This installation has been declared a prohibited zone under Galactic Security Protocol 7 Alpha. Marcus clutched the data device James had given him, the weight of decision pressing down with each passing second. Outside the central chamber, the sounds of security forces breaching the outer doors reverberated through the structure. There's another way out, James said, moving to a control panel disguised as part of the wall. A direct shuttle to the network hub. It's our only chance. They'll track it, Kira objected. Not if we activate the Echo protocol. James's fingers moved across the panel with practiced precision. It'll create consensus distortions throughout the sector, temporary reality fluctuations that will mask our departure. That's insane, Marcus said. You'd risk destabilizing an entire sector just to escape. James turned to him, eyes ablaze with intensity. This isn't about escape. It's about showing you the full truth. The part even I wasn't permitted to know until 10 years ago. The real reason Earth maintains its isolation. He finished the sequence, and the floor beneath them began to descend. Make your choice, Marcus. Now, come with us or stay and surrender. The sounds of assembly forces grew louder. Marcus looked at the data device in his palm, then at the descending platform where James and Kira waited. With a silent curse at his own recklessness, he stepped onto the platform just as it sealed above them. I hope you're right about this, he muttered. I'm not, James replied grimly. But Earth is. The transport vessel was unlike any craft Marcus had ever seen, sleek, with no visible propulsion system, its hull composed of a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As they accelerated away from the facility, the view screen showed assembly vessels converging on the abandoned outpost. They won't find anything useful, James said, monitoring the craft's systems. The echo chamber was designed to self-destruct if compromised. All they'll recover is radiation and debris. You just destroyed centuries of historical data, Marcus said, appalled. Copied, not destroyed. James tapped the control console. Everything was duplicated to the network hub long ago. We just denied it to them. Where exactly are we going? Marcus asked, as stars streaked past at impossible speeds. The vessel's acceleration should have crushed them, yet he felt nothing, no inertia, no pressure, as if the normal laws of physics had been politely asked to make an exception to what you might call the true seat of human power, Kira answered. The place where Earth's representatives actually gather, far from the Assembly's eyes. The void is accelerating its approach, James added, indicating a distortion pattern on the navigation display. Network sensors estimate impact with the outermost assembly worlds within 18 months, not 50 years as we previously calculated. Impact? Marcus questioned. You make it sound like a physical object. In a sense, it is, James replied. Though anti-object might be more accurate, a region where the fundamental forces that bind reality together simply unravel. The transport vessel suddenly decelerated, and a massive structure materialized before them, a spherical construct, the size of a small moon, its surface covered with a latticework of glowing blue lines that pulsed in perfect synchronization. The network hub, James announced, the true heart of humanity's presence in the galaxy. Impossible, Marcus whispered. Something this size couldn't remain hidden. It doesn't remain hidden, Kira corrected. It remains unseen. The hub exists in a state of reality consensus negation. It's simultaneously here and not here, depending on who observes it and what they expect to see. That's beyond your current understanding of physics, James finished for him. Yes, that's rather the point. As they docked with the structure, Marcus felt a strange sensation, as if the boundaries of his own body were becoming less certain, his consciousness expanding beyond its normal limitations. The sensation passed as they disembarked into a vast chamber filled with thousands of people, all human, all focused on massive holographic displays showing different sectors of the galaxy. At the center of the chamber stood a perfect replica of the empty seat from the assembly hall. "Welcome to Consensus Command," said a voice behind them. "We've been expecting you, Marcus Thorne." Marcus turned to face a woman whose ageless features and penetrating gaze suggested both great wisdom and great burden. She wore no insignia of rank or position, yet the respect shown by those around her was unmistakable. "Director Hayes," James said with formal deference. "I've brought him as instructed." "Good." The woman studied Marcus with unsettling intensity. "The network detected your curiosity the moment you first noticed our empty seat. A promising sign." "You've been watching me?" Marcus asked, unsettled by the implication. "We've been watching everyone," Hayes replied matter-of-factly. "It's what we do. It's why we maintain the fiction of Earth's isolation. It's easier to observe when people believe you've withdrawn from the game entirely." Around them, the displays showing different sectors of the galaxy began to flash with warning indicators. Technicians moved with increased urgency, their voices rising in concern. "The void has accelerated again," Hayes noted, her calm demeanor unchanged despite the growing alarm around her. "We need to make our decision now." "What decision?" Marcus asked. "Whether to continue our charade or reveal ourselves," she replied. "Whether to trust the Assembly with the truth or take unilateral action." She gestured to the replica of the empty seat. "That symbol has served its purpose for 3 centuries, maintaining the fiction that humanity fears integration when the truth is precisely the opposite." "I don't understand," Marcus said, frustration mounting. "If humans don't fear integration, why maintain isolation?" "Because of what we discovered about consciousness itself," Hayes explained, "about the fundamental nature of reality and the dangers of consensus." She indicated the pulsing displays around them. "When the first void appeared 20,000 years ago, it destroyed the civilization that preceded the Assembly, a species that had mastered consensus reality manipulation far beyond our current capabilities. The precursors," Marcus whispered, recalling ancient myths that most considered mere fables. "Yes, they achieved perfect consensus consciousness, complete agreement among all members of their species about the nature of reality, and in doing so, they created a paradox that tore a hole in the fabric of existence itself." Hayes's expression darkened. "Complete consensus is a cosmic catastrophe. Reality requires disagreement, the tension between differing perspectives to maintain stability." "You're saying the void is the aftermath of perfect agreement," Hayes confirmed. "A consensus singularity that continues to expand, unraveling reality as it grows. And now, a new one has formed." A technician approached urgently. Director, the void has breached the containment barrier in Sector 7. Consensus patterns show critical instability. Hayes nodded grimly. Activate the dissonance protocol. Throughout the hub, the blue latticework suddenly pulsed crimson. On the displays, Marcus watched in awe as thousands of tiny points of light, the human observers scattered throughout the galaxy, began emitting waves of energy that visibly distorted space around them. "What are you doing?" he asked, unable to tear his eyes from the spectacle. "Creating deliberate reality dissonance," Hayes replied. "Introducing calculated uncertainty and disagreement to counteract the void's perfect entropy. It's why we've maintained our presence throughout the galaxy, not to monitor the assembly, but to establish a network that could generate reality friction when needed." The empty seat, Marcus realized suddenly. It's not a symbol of Earth's absence. It's the focal point of our dissonance network, Hayes confirmed. Positioned at the precise mathematical center of the assembly chamber, it serves as the primary node for our countermeasures. The seat remains empty because it's not meant for a person. It's a consensus engine designed to look like furniture. The displays showed the wave of energy from the human network colliding with the advancing void. Where they met, reality itself seemed to shudder and tear before restabilizing in chaotic patterns. "It's not enough," James said, studying the readings. "The void's expansion is only slowing, not stopping." "Then we move to Phase 2, Hayes decided. She turned to Marcus. "The assembly believes Earth isolated itself out of arrogance or fear. The truth is we've been protecting them from a threat they refuse to acknowledge. Now we need their help, their consciousness, their disagreement, their dissonance, to strengthen the barrier." "You want me to tell them?" Marcus realized. "That's why James brought me here, because I have access to the assembly." "Not just tell them," Hayes corrected. "Show them." She gestured, and the replica seat in the center of the chamber began to glow with increasing intensity. Simultaneously, on the displays showing the assembly chamber billions of kilometers away, the real empty seat pulsed with identical light. "For 3 centuries, we've hidden our true purpose," Hayes said. "The seat was never empty. It was filled with potential energy, waiting for the moment it would be needed." She handed Marcus what appeared to be a simple communication device. "Return to the assembly. When you activate this, the seat will reveal its true nature." "And then what happens?" Marcus asked. "Either the beginning of true galactic cooperation," Hayes replied, "or the end of everything." The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly had been convened in record time. Representatives from every member species filled the chamber, their collective anxiety a palpable force as reports of spatial anomalies and reality fluctuations spread throughout the galaxy. Marcus stood at the entrance, the device Hayes had given him concealed in his hand. Beside him, Kira maintained her position as his supposed captor, having convinced Assembly security that she had apprehended him attempting to flee. "The fugitive envoy has crucial information about the anomalies," she informed the security checkpoint. "He demands to address the full assembly." Protocol would normally have denied such a request, but normal had ceased to exist hours ago when entire star systems began reporting impossible physics events, gravity reversing direction, light slowing to visible speeds, time itself flowing at different rates in neighboring regions. The Syrian ambassador spotted them first, her crystalline form vibrating with barely controlled fury. "You!" she hissed at Marcus. "What have you done?" "Not him," Vorax interjected, appearing from a side chamber. "Earth. This is their doing." "Yes." "And no," Marcus replied, stepping past them toward the central floor. Before anyone could stop him, he had reached the open space directly in front of the empty Earth seat. "Distinguished representatives," he announced, his diplomatic training giving his voice a projection and authority that surprised even himself. "The anomalies you're experiencing are symptoms of a greater threat, a void of non-existence approaching our galaxy. Earth has been containing it for centuries, but can no longer do so alone." Murmurs and translations rippled through the chamber. The Council Arbiter, a massive Demebian, rose from his position. "What evidence supports these claims?" In answer, Marcus activated the device in his hand. The empty seat, the symbol that had mystified and terrified the galaxy for 3 centuries, began to transform. Its surface rippled like liquid, the strange blue-black material flowing and reshaping until it formed not a seat at all, but a complex mechanism that extended tendrils of energy throughout the chamber, connecting to points in the floor, ceiling, and walls that had gone unnoticed for generations. The seat was never meant to be occupied. Marcus explained as the assembly watched in stunned silence. It's a consensus diffraction engine, a device designed to harness the dissonance of multiple conscious perspectives to create reality stability. On the main display screens around the chamber, images appeared showing the approaching void, a perfect nothingness that consumed light, matter, energy, and space itself as it advanced. Earth detected this threat centuries ago, Marcus continued. Rather than trying to explain a concept most species would find incomprehensible, they chose isolation, positioning this device at the heart of galactic governance and maintaining a network of human observers throughout assembly space to monitor and contain the void. A network? The Tau Ceti observer demanded. You violated the isolation accord. To protect you, countered a new voice. Director Hayes stepped through the chamber entrance, flanked by James Wilson and a dozen other humans whose appearances varied, but whose purposeful demeanor was identical. We maintained the fiction of our absence, so we could work without interference. The chamber erupted in chaos, accusations, demands for explanation, calls for immediate action against Earth for centuries of deception. The consensus engine in the center of the room pulsed brighter with each shouted disagreement, drawing energy from the discord itself. Enough. Hayes's voice cut through the din with impossible authority, not through volume but through a quality that seemed to bypass normal hearing entirely. Your disagreement is precisely what we need. Your dissent, your arguments, your different perspectives, these create the reality friction that can stabilize the breach. The main display shifted to show the void's advance slowing as the energy from the consensus engine expanded outward. It's working, Marcus realized. The more they argue, the stronger the barrier becomes. Precisely, Hayes confirmed. Consensus collapse happens when a civilization achieves perfect agreement, when diversity of thought vanishes and a single perspective dominates. The precursors destroyed themselves this way. We've been preventing the assembly from making the same mistake. By lying to us for centuries, the Syrian ambassador demanded. By allowing you to fear us, Hayes corrected. Fear creates dissent. Dissent creates reality stability. But now we need more than passive disagreement. We need active cooperation in dissonance. The consensus engine at the center of the chamber pulsed again, this time projecting a holographic model of the galaxy with thousands of points marked throughout. These are the locations where consensus engines must be constructed, Hayes explained. Not just by humans, but by every species, each contributing their unique consciousness patterns to create a dissonance network strong enough to permanently contain the void. You're asking us to trust you after centuries of deception, the council arbiter stated, his massive form looming over the proceedings. No, Marcus interjected, stepping forward. They're asking you to disagree with them constructively, to maintain your suspicion, your unique perspective, your cultural differences, but to channel them into a network designed to preserve reality itself. Throughout the chamber, representatives began to understand, each viewing the proposal through their species' unique perceptual framework, each bringing different objections, concerns, and suggestions, and with each divergent thought, the consensus engine grew brighter. The barrier is stabilizing, James announced, monitoring a portable display. The void's advance has halted heartily. Then we have a chance, Hayes said. She turned to address the full assembly. Earth's seat was never empty. It was filled with the potential of what we could achieve together through structured disagreement. Not unified consensus, but harmonized dissonance. A cosmic paradox, the Syrian ambassador observed, her crystalline form refracting the light from the engine into prismatic patterns. Agreement to disagree, literally sustaining reality itself. The most powerful force in existence, Hayes confirmed, and the reason Earth remained apart, not because we were integration, but because we feared what would happen if the galaxy achieved the perfect consensus that destroyed the precursors. As the assembly representatives continued their structured debate, the consensus engine's energy field expanded throughout the chamber, then beyond, connecting to the human network scattered across the galaxy. On the displays, the void's expansion not only halted but began to reverse slightly. Marcus watched in awe as centuries of misunderstanding dissolved in hours of productive discord. The empty seat, the symbol that had terrified the galaxy, was now recognized as its salvation. Later, as the emergency session adjourned to begin implementation of the dissonance network, Hayes approached Marcus privately. "You did well," she said. "Better than we anticipated." "What happens now?" he asked. Now, Hayes's expression grew distant. Now we face the greater question that even Earth has been afraid to ask. She handed him a small data crystal, different from the one James had given him earlier. When you're ready to know why the void exists at all, why reality itself seems designed to collapse without active maintenance, this will show you. There's more? Marcus asked, exhaustion and incredulity warring in his voice. Hayes smiled enigmatically. Earth's empty seat terrified the galaxy because it represented a truth no one was ready to face. That reality is not a natural state, but an artificial construct requiring constant maintenance. The void isn't a cosmic accident, Marcus. It's a feature, not a flaw, and understanding why will be your next journey. She walked away, leaving Marcus holding a crystal that seemed to pulse with its own inner light, a tiny consensus engine containing a truth so profound that even Earth had kept it hidden until now. The galaxy had survived its first confrontation with cosmic entropy, but Marcus somehow knew this was merely the opening movement in a much grander and more terrifying symphony. Reality itself had architects, and they had left a message in the void.